What is up guys, Deadset here. Patch 2.12 shifts the strongest Barbarian playstyle, Furious Charge with the Raekor set, into a smoother version. Let me walk you through it. The focus of the set remains intact, delivering ridiculous amounts of damage to the enemy by maintaining the 5-piece bonus of Raekor that gives you all the runes of Furious Charge at once, and amplifying their effect through the Vileward Shoulder. This is the build I use in the demonstration, and now I'll go over the skills individually. Furious Charge is still the centerpiece of the build. While you have to select a rune appropriate to your skill synergy and gear, in this case the physical-based stamina, you'll still enjoy the benefits of all the runes because of the Raekor set bonus. The damage of Battering Ram, the cooldown reduction of Merciless Assault, the freezing effect of Cold Rush, and the newfound double charge effect of Dreadnought work together for a murderous cocktail. Note that the pulling effect is no longer present in the Lightning rune, which instead grants you 2 charges to play with by default. This significantly decreases the skill threshold and cooldown requirements of the build, making it easier than ever to get into. While undeniably a beast in terms of area of effect damage, Furious Charge comes to a grinding halt in single target situations, and there is a significant instance of these at the end of every run, the Rift Guardian. 2 skills are incorporated in the build to mitigate this glaring weakness, helping you overcome the loss of the pulling effect and to group monsters together for more effective damage per charge. We introduce Ground Stomp with Wrenching Smash to the build. It is an excellent crowd control and displacement tool on a short cooldown that does not waste fury. In fact, it generates some, ensuring the Berserker Rage passive stays up. The choice of this skill leans heavily into the AoE strength of the build and counts on leaving the maximum time possible for the Rift Guardian clear. If you are wary of overcommitting to AoE through Ground Stomp, there is a fire damage variation of this build that replaces the stamina rune of Furious Charge for Battering Ram, incorporates Frenzy with Maniac in the place of Ground Stomp, and runs Myrinae instead of Gem of Efficacious Toxin. All the physical elemental damage on the gear should be replaced by fire. Frenzy is an excellent filler skill for several reasons. First off, it's a generator by nature. While its damage percentages are lower than a spender like Seismic Slam or Hammer of the Ancients, it will never cause you to run out of fury and lose the benefits of the Berserker Rage passive. Second, repeated Frenzy use ramps its attack speed up to 4 stacks, and coupled up with the skill's high proc coefficient will bring you a lot of additional damage from the Myrinae legendary gem. Finally, the Fire Rune Maniac will also bring an additional damage buff as you stack Frenzy up. For Torment 6 speed farming purposes, a decently geared Barbarian will kill too quickly for Frenzy or Ground Stomp to matter. Thus, the physical element variation of the build is preferred, as both skills give way for Sprint with Run Like the Wind, a skill that combines both mobility and physical damage in one strong concoction. A source of reliable single target damage comes from Call of the Ancients with the Council Rises rune. The 3 summons can be rotated with Wrath of the Berserker during elite fights, can be used in conjunction whenever burst is needed, or serve as a distraction while you retreat and wait for a defensive cooldown. The damage boost provided by the Fire rune is one of the biggest reasons to aim for cooldown reduction or to try the fire variation of Raekor. In fact, it is so powerful that you should keep it even in the physical variation. Charging in and brawling at a close range with Ground Stomp will inevitably expose you to great danger the higher you climb in greater rifts. Thus, a portion of our gear and skills will be devoted to powerful percentage-based mitigation. One such tool is Ignore Pain, reducing incoming damage by 50%, with a duration extended by both the rune Ironhide and the belt Pride of Cassius for near permanent uptime. Another notable option is the Ignorance is Bliss rune, which synergizes with the fury spent by refreshing Battle Rage and provides you with another source of player-controlled healing. Once again, however, for Torment 6 speed farming, we will deviate from the Ignore Pain standard and instead introduce Warcry with Impunity into the build. Warcry will still offer a survivability boost for this predominantly offense-focused Barbarian playstyle, but it will also turn into a mobility tool. Taking advantage of the unique property of Chilanic's Chain Mighty Belt, you will speed up not only yourself but nearby allies as well. We mentioned the use of Battle Rage. This staple buff of the Barbarian boosts your damage directly along with your crit chance and adds a devastating source of AoE damage with the Bloodshed rune. Much like the Pain Enhancer legendary gem, its physical nature lends itself better to the physical variation of the Raekor build, but even with the Fire Raekor, it is still a worthy addition to any Barbarian. Whether you use it passively and only refresh it when it's about to fall off, or use the interplay with Ignore Pain, Ignorance is Bliss, is up to your personal preference. Finally, we have another signature Barbarian steroid, Wrath of the Berserker, with the purely damage-oriented Insanity rune. For a brief window of 20 seconds, this ability will turn you into an unstoppable force of carnage, with your damage, crit chance, attack speed, dodge chance, and movement speed amplified by various percentages. The allure of having this skill and Call of the Ancients up as often as possible is a good enough reason to keep cooldown reduction on gear and the Boon of Bulkathos passive in mind. This concludes my overview of the active skills. Now let us look through the passives. With a bulldozing playstyle that emphasizes both brutality and agility, the Raekor Barbarian uses the Rampage passive to great efficiency. With the potential to stack up to 25% additional strength, increasing your damage and toughness substantially, it is important to learn to keep this passive up. Always being on the move towards bigger fights, where killing minor enemies will feed your stacks, is key. Picking Berserker Rage as our second passive takes advantage of our choices for the active skills of the build. Both Furious Charge and Ground Stomp generate Fury, and with only Battle Rage to spend it, you enjoy the significant uptime of this strong damage amplifier. Completing the triad of amplifiers, Ruthless makes a tight fit and edges over Brawler for one simple reason: it shines during Rift Guardian fights. Once you bring your target below 30% health, your damage skyrockets with an additional 40%, ensuring the mortal blow will be dealt well ahead of the timer. Finally, we have Boon of Bulkathos, a passive well deserving the name of the Barbarian legend. Bringing two of your important cooldowns down by half a minute, the boon adds to the potency of the cooldown reduction already on your gear for considerably more calls to the Ancients and Berserker activations per rift. That about covers it for the build. Now let's go over the items. With the 2.12 double Furious Charge mechanic and subsequent demise of cooldown reduction breakpoint chasing, the value of the old favorite Leoric's Crown Helm is significantly diminished. Currently, wearing all 5 pieces of the Legacy of Raekor is generally preferred, freeing up one of your ring slots for better offensive jewelry than the Ring of Royal Grandeur. Rolls-wise, it is strongly suggested to stack Toughness on the Raekor Helm, Raekor Pants, and Raekor Boots. A pure offensive roll on the Raekor Gloves with both crit stats is mandatory, and cooldown reduction as your 4th primary is still strongly advised. On the Raekor Chest, you have 2 viable options. One is to increase your upfront burst with a Furious Charge skill damage roll. The other is to take into consideration the strong damage scaling already present on the Vile Ward shoulder and opt for additional mitigation on the chest with a reduced damage from elites roll. Speaking of the Vile Ward, this shoulder is mandatory if you want to expect good performance of the build, especially in greater rifts. While using the Raekor shoulder can be a temporary solution to attain the set bonus, you will take it to another level with the Vile Ward, whose damage scaling is only limited by the number of enemies you can fight at once. With the increase of monster density in patch 2.12, the damage boost from that legendary shoulder is overwhelming. Such offensive power comes at a terrible cost, however. The Barbarian suffers from more survivability issues than his melee counterparts, the Crusader and the Monk, with few noteworthy defense passives and no shield to protect him in this two-hander oriented build. This is partially remedied with the use of 2 very strong defensive pieces of gear. Pride of Cassius was already mentioned. Arguably the strongest Greater Rifting belt for Barbarians, it will roughly double the duration of your Ignore Pain activations. It should be noted that the unique property of Pride of Cassius is not fixed, and you should actively seek and gamble for the highest 6-second extension. The other protective piece is the Ancient Parthan Defenders, a legendary bracer whose unique property offers percentage-based mitigation for every enemy stunned in a sizable radius around you. It is not entirely clear why Furious Charge procs the Ancient Parthan Defenders with a freeze, which is certainly different than a stun, but it does, and no other bracer will help you quite as much. The Strong Arm bracers, for example, have fallen heavily out of favor with the removal of the Dreadnought pulling effect. For your jewelry, a Unity Ring on yourself and your follower, along with an Immortality Relic for him, is mandatory for Greater Rifts above level 35. As for the second ring, you have two viable options, a straightforward elemental and elite damage choice with a Stone of Jordan, or the more exotic Bulkathos Wedding Band. While the latter will edge out in Rift Guardian damage in extremely high progression environments because of its percentage-based proc, it also requires you to be standing constantly in very close proximity to the enemy, which is usually only an option with the appropriate immunity amulet. On the topic of necks, aim for as perfect of an elemental amulet as you can. The ideal rolls are crit chance, crit damage, an open socket, and elemental damage, either physical or fire for your variation of choice. The better of an amulet you get with these stats, the lesser the concern when charging into the fray. For example, immunity amulets such as the Zephyrian or the Star of Askaranth will allow you to ignore the two deadliest affixes for the Furious Charge Barb, Electrified and Fire Chains respectively. Finally, let's talk about the weapon. The preferred weapon for the build is the Furnace, the strongest generic two-handed weapon in the game. With the high two-hander damage range and rolling up to 50% additional elite damage as a free 5th affix, it's an optimal choice in Greater Rifts, where Elite and Rift Guardian fights will take up the majority of your time. Viable but weaker alternatives are the Heart Slaughter for the physical variation or the Maximus for the fire. The jewelry sockets should be slotted with the legendary gems Bane of the Trapped, Pain Enhancer, and either Gem of Efficacious Toxin for the physical Raekor or Myrinae for the fire Raekor. Bane of the Trapped is a potent source of additional damage, as it is its own multiplier in your total damage calculation. The Pain Enhancer synergizes with the crit boosts from both Battle Rage and Wrath of the Berserker, adding nicely to your damage. Myrinae is an excellent source of single target, while Gem of Efficacious Toxin further emphasizes your AoE potential, and you can either try to balance your drawbacks or go hard with your biggest strengths. In the Paragon points, max out movement speed and then strength in the core section, cooldown reduction and then crit chance and crit damage in the offense section, resist all, armor and then life percentage in defense, and area damage and life on hit in utility. It should be noted that if you try to heal through Battle Rage, each point of Fury spent equates to more life gained back, and thus resource cost reduction is to be avoided in Paragon, even if you have the points to spare. And this is it for the Barbarian Raekor build. I hope you enjoyed the guide, and if you did, I would appreciate your subscription to my channel. See me live at twitch.tv/thedeadset, talk to me on Twitter and Facebook that I linked below, and I'll see you guys next time.